084 850. Iain Dale at Drive on LBC.
Hello, a very good evening. I'm Iain Dale at Drive, leading Britain's conversation here on LBC. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 5. The number to call if you'd like to talk to Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls is 0845 6060 973. That he's with me for the next half an hour or so. Now, after 6, we're going to turn our attention to the number of Bulgarians and Romanians coming into this country. Do you know, since January, there are actually 4,000 fewer Bulgarians and Romanians coming into this country. Have certain people been guilty of scaremongering? Then after 7:15, we'll be asking how people cope with bowel cancer on the day that Stephen Sutton sadly lost his battle for life. Ed Balls is with me, the Shadow Chancellor. It seems a long time since you were last here, and we've had the Eurovision Song Contest in between, which I know you're an avid fan of. We won't be talking about that. Well, we might have a little chat right at the end of the, if we have time. But
it feels like yesterday to me, Ian.
Does it really?
Like yesterday that we were both on this programme together.
Okay.
Talking to the UK.
He's looking rather doe-eyed.
LBC UK.
That's not our title, but we'll settle for
across
it.
across the nations and regions of Britain.
6060 That's the number to call if you'd like to talk to Ed Balls. Now, before we go to your calls, you won't have heard the interview because you were on the bus up Whitehall coming up here. But
on the bus.
I was talking to Austin Mitchell about this tweet that he's put out about Pfizer, which I've got the text of here somewhere, which I now can't know. Here it is. He said, Cameron dare not stop Pfizer because he dare not offend the US in any way. Roll up rapists. Well, that has understandably caused a bit of a furore in Parliament today. Several Conservative female MPs are saying, look, if this had happened to a Tory MP, if a Tory MP had done this, Harriet Harman would be demanding their resignation. And yet Austin refuses to apologise. He just did it again with me, despite your party spokesman telling the media that he has apologised.
Well, I was told he'd apologised while I was on the bus on the way up here.
I'm afraid
and it
not.
Seems from your programme...
We can play it out to you if you want.
No, don't worry. I have to say that I was surprised to hear he'd apologised, and so the fact that he's confirmed he's not apologising in your programme, look, it was a really very, very stupid thing to say. And it was an offensive thing to say. And, you know, we've all known Austin for years. He's standing down at the next election. He's what people call a character. But characters can also say offensive and stupid things. And if I was him, I'd reflect on this for half an hour and apologise.
Is it something you think the party needs to take action on?
I think that somebody who says something really stupid on Twitter should apologise. And I think the party thought he'd taken action, and as you said, that doesn't seem that way. I'm sure that the powers that be within our party and the Chief Whip, Rosie Winterton, will be looking at this one. But I'm not sure it's a disciplinary action. I think it's stupid and he should apologise. But those are for people other than me to decide.
OK, well, let's move on to the calls. George is in Enfield. George, what would you like to ask Ed?
Hi, evening.
Good morning, George. Good afternoon, George, sorry.
Evening, yeah.
Evening.
Afternoon, whatever you want to call it.
It feels so sunny in London today. It didn't really feel like evening yet.
It's absolutely beautiful.
It's a fabulous day.
The thing is, just getting on to that Austin stupid quote, right?
Yep.
This is one of the problems. I think most media report ridiculous things. Everyone knows the bloke's an idiot. Just move on. Forget about it. Don't make any headway out of it. Don't have any political comments on it. All these people, you know, it's like the Farage campaign. A lot of his party are nutters. That's just how life is. Just get on and move on.
George, I've got to ask you to ask your question.
The problem is, George, isn't it, that this is actually a really serious issue. Does this an American company buy AstraZeneca in a way which is good for Britain, or do we end up losing jobs and research and development and weaken our science base? The problem is we're going to be discussing Austin Mitchell's stupid remark rather than the big issue, and that's what's frustrating.
I agree, totally. That's a serious issue, and we just got to ignore what Austin said and get on with.
Right. Do you have a question, George?
Right.
Question? There's no time for questions here. We're just agreeing here, aren't we, George? We're just agreeing.
No, come on, George. Ask your question.
Yeah. No, I want to ask this question. Right. Look, I think unemployment going down is a brilliant thing, etc., etc., and I'm all for it. I want this country to be a great country. I don't think it is particularly now. But the one key thing I want to know is, all these jobs that are created, I really need to know how many of them are state dependent. Because when I started working, right, we never heard of anyone being state dependent. I could live very comfortably off of low paid wages. I was unskilled when I left school. I'd never taken an exam. I could live. When we moved
George,
in...
I really need a question from you because we've only got a limited amount of time.
That is the question.
How many?
Why are these jobs? I want to know how many jobs are state dependent and why they're state dependent.
Okay.
Well, look, there's some people, obviously, George, who are employed in the National Health Service or teachers in schools, and they're directly paid by our tax money. Compared to 30 or 40 years ago, these days, we have lots more jobs in our country, which in the private sector are much lower paid compared to the average wage. And you've got a question to decide. Do you keep those jobs? Do you just not have people taking them because it just doesn't pay? Or do you say, let's have some top-up, what you might call a tax credit, to make sure that people can get for a period a low-paid job with some extra help so they can get skills and move on to better jobs in future? And the United States, Britain, we're both countries who've decided that part of the way in which we have more jobs but don't have people living in poverty is to make work pay by topping up incomes of people who are working hard. I think that's probably quite a good thing. So you might call that state dependent. I would say that's making work pay. We're always a country which has valued work, but work's got to pay.
And the other point I suppose to make is that at the last election, both parties were saying that the public sector would have to shed jobs. And I know you didn't want to do it as quickly as the Conservatives. And you were saying, well, the private sector won't be able to take up the slack. Well, according to the figures out today, that's exactly what the private sector has done.
I think what we've seen over the last year is more private sector jobs than people expected, more part-time jobs than people wanted, far more self-employment than anybody's seen in our country ever. What we don't know is what is really going on here. We know that people are worse off, that they're in work but not getting as much income as before. Lots of people would like to work full-time. I think it's good to have work. We want people in work. We want work to pay. But I am worried that at the moment there's lots of people listening to your programme who want to work more hours, who are feeling worse off, and being told by David Cameron, my plan's working because you've got a job. People are turning around and saying, well, actually, that's not really yet working for me. I want work to pay and I want to be better off, and they're worse off under the toys at the moment.
Now, we are also broadcasting this live on our website. If you go to lbc.co.uk, you can watch us in glorious Technicolor as well. The link,
give them a wave in.
The link is on the front page. That's my camera up there, so I don't wave to yours. Right, let's go to another question from Ali, who's in Queen's Park. Hello, Ali.
Oh, hi. Thanks for a good show. I'll quickly ask my questions.
Hi, Ali.
You can answer them. Hi, hello there. We've got a number of houses that we let out to the social services on a studio basis. And since the Conservatives came to power, they've had this disastrous, as far as landlords are concerned, policy. We've made a lot of losses, which basically is all targeting landlords. In a nutshell, they increased the age that people are entitled to get a bedsit from 25 to 35. And then they're refusing as much as they can to allow the landlords to have the rent because they want the person to be responsible, which means most of them, as soon as there is money in there, 2 or 3 months rent, £2,000-3,000 or something, a lot of them actually pack their bags and go. And we're left with nothing. And this year we lost about £20,000 because of that. So I'd like to know, and my final question is on the rent issue, is the Labour's policies going to change their short haul tenancy from 6 months to 3 years? And finally, a non-landlord question.
That's the second finally.
Finally. Finally is that, again, unfortunately, this government had absolutely no idea what the needs and the encouragement of adolescents. And I actually concentrated on my boy to getting him trained. And now, fortunately, good news, yesterday, pushing him into a full-time job. And I just felt the Deputy Prime Minister, when I listened to his speeches, because I'm at my other full-time job as a psychologist, he had absolutely no idea what the needs of the youth and training was. It basically pushed them to work. And if I left my boy, he wouldn't have got anywhere at all.
Right. Ed Balls.
And the question is, what is their policy as far as the adolescents are concerned?
Well, look, I'm not for defending the Deputy Prime Minister, Ali, but I am for getting young people into work, and good news your son's got a job. I think the first thing is you've got to have young people coming out of school with decent qualifications who can work in a team, communicate well, solve a problem. You don't always learn those things from academic exams or written exams. You need people to learn those wider skills, and lots of young people have got a vocational aptitude rather than academic. We need all those young people getting skills and apprentices, and I'm glad it's worked for your son. what often happens is if you get stuck in unemployment for a long time, it can be hard to get back into the world of work. So we're saying for young people, we'll say if you're out of work for over 12 months, we'll guarantee a job, but you'll have to take it. You can't just stay on benefit. As far as landlords is concerned, we do want to increase the average or the normal tenancy from 6 months up to closer to 3 years. That wouldn't always be the rule, but we'd like to do that because we think that would give more stability for people renting. I want more people renting like you, but I want to make sure the taxpayer and people who rent get a fair deal. The housing benefit bill's gone up, rents have gone up. I think lots of people think that some landlords have been doing pretty well in London over the last few years, but we need tougher rules.
It might also restrict the supply of housing, because if landlords feel that they have to have 3-year tenancy, they may not want to rent their houses out.
Well, we need to get more houses in our country being built to buy or to rent. I know, but that's the biggest issue at the moment in terms of the restriction of supply. And the reason why there are so many more, millions more renting now than a few years ago is not because of rules around rents. It's been because of house prices going up and people being unable to afford to get on the housing ladder. I think that you can get to a fair deal for people renting and for the taxpayer without stopping Ali from making a decent profit, putting his houses into the market. I don't think we'll restrict this. OK,
thank you very much. More time for your questions after the news and travel. 0845 6060 973. Ed Balls is here with me for, another 20 minutes or so. You can get your calls in now. 0845 6060 973. This is LBC. It's 16 minutes past 5.
Iain Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC. Motorists, we salute you.
Welcome to London's exquisite Indian dining experience, Marla Restaurant. The finest North Indian cuisine in the most charming setting. Find us in the heart of one of London's divine hidden gems, St Catherine's Dock. Marla Restaurant. Visit us in St Catherine's Dock or go to marlarestaurant.co.uk.
Marla. Discover a jewel in London's secret paradise.
You're busy enough. Do you really want to spend time you don't have managing your property portfolio? Voted Best UK Single Office 2013 at the Sunday Times Awards, let for you. We've been helping landlords let and manage London properties for over 25 years, and in our opinion, there's no one better. Manage your time, not your portfolio, because at Paramount Properties, we've got it covered. Visit paramountproperties.co.uk/radio. Conditions apply.
Is your company thinking of moving office? If so, this could be the perfect opportunity to revolutionise your business, transform your workplace, and inspire your staff. Speak to Maris Interiors, who've been designing and fitting out workplaces for over 3 decades. Book your free consultation, attend a free seminar, or get your free guidebook. Go to officerelocation.co.uk. Maris. Workplace Design Experts.
It's 18 minutes past 5. News headlines, Simon Conway.
Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls has told LBC a Labour MP's tweets comparing American drugs firm Pfizer to rapists was a very stupid and offensive thing to say. Austin Mitchell has refused to apologise. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney has played down expectations of an early interest rate rise, but says the UK economy is heading back to normal. David Cameron has described teenager Stephen Sutton as absolutely inspiring. The 19-year-old died from cancer this morning after raising millions of pounds for charity. This is LBC. Your travel news is next.
You are dynamic. Like a beatbox symphony, you quicken the pulse. Sure, you're made of metal, but it must be mercury, 'cause stillness doesn't suit you. You're an athlete on the blocks, head up and sprinting on the beat of bang. Your wheels, they roll like a barreling wave, which makes me the surfer, and I'm going to catch you if I can. You are dynamic. You are a Mercedes-Benz. And with £1,000 towards the finance deposit on selected approved used E-Class, C-Class and SLK models at 9.9% APR representative, you've really got me thinking.
Search Mercedes-Benz approved used. Offer ends 31st August 2014. Models over 90 days and up to 4 years old, subject to status Mercedes-Benz finance.
I'm Amy Solomon in the LBC Travel Centre. In West London, in Wembley, the North Circular's down to 2 lanes northbound still at the Brentfield Road IKEA. It's because of an accident, so queues on the approach from Gunnersbury Park. Also in Bedfordshire, you'll find the northbound M1 slow between junction 7 at Hemel Hempstead and 10 at Luton Airport after an accident. And the A5 is closed both ways in Buckinghamshire at Bletchley between the Redmore roundabout and the Caldecott roundabout for a police investigation on one of the overbridges. In Hampshire, the A31 closed eastbound between Lower Froyle and Bentley after 2 separate accidents on that stretch. There are delays towards Farnham. And in Worcestershire, the M5 slow northbound between junctions 5 at Droitwich and 4A at the M42. Got a breakdown blocking a lane in the roadworks section. Recovery's underway now. A49 very slow northbound in Shropshire at Dorrington as well. A car towing a horse box is broken down, partly blocking the Blind Bend near Shrewsbury Golf Club. Keeping you moving. Next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Work smarter and strike a work-life balance.
118434, the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 55 pence plus 99 pence per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
Come and experience Lebanese dining at Marouche Restaurants. Try some of our amazing dishes, kafta dipped in a delicious hummus, or a colourful meze, complemented by a robust Lebanese red. With live music and traditional belly dancing, enjoy an atmosphere to match the food's rich and distinctive flavours. Go to marouche.com to find out more. Marouche Restaurants, the finest Lebanese food across London.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Children should be encouraged to use teachers' first names to ensure that pupils are not exposed to the prejudices of previous generations. Professor Sarah Mills is from the Linguistics Department at Sheffield Hallam University. What are the advantages, Professor, or would you rather I called you Sarah?
I'm quite happy with you calling me Sarah.
I'm going to call you Professor out of respect for the position that you have earned. Fancy a job paying up to £74,322, virtually £81,000 a year. No previous experience is necessary. You'll go straight into the police as a superintendent. Without realising, Superintendent Ferrari is suddenly in charge of a major incident. I was a broadcaster until last week.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Every weekday morning from 7. Only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton. Refreshingly different and surprisingly affordable hotels.
22 minutes past 5. You can watch us on lbc.co.uk. Just go to the website. There's a link on the front page so you can watch us as well as listen to us. Ed Balls is with me, the Shadow Chancellor, taking your calls. 0845 6060 973. Anthea says, you've got Ed Balls on this week, Chukwuemeka last week, Labour bias, Ian. Well, we've got Harriet Harman on next week, but we had Jeremy Hunt on. We have lots of people from all over the parties throughout the schedule. So I don't think you should really accuse anybody of bias, because there are actually legal restrictions in election times. Now, you've heard from David Cameron and Ed Balls already this week. Tomorrow, it's the turn of Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg. He will be here from 9 a.m. with Nick Ferrari, as usual, for Call Clegg. Now, on the subject of the economy, because there's lots of economic news out today, unemployment is down, growth forecasts are up. Here's how the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney assessed things earlier.
Let me try to put the situation like this. Securing the recovery is like making it through the qualifying rounds of the World Cup.
Now, just on that, David in Poole has texted in saying, if our economic prospects are only as good as England's World Cup chances, surely we're doomed.
You can't talk Britain down in that way. You can't talk England down.
David in Poole
you can't talk down our economy, and you can't talk down the prospect. Look, we're going to win the World Cup. We're always going to win the World Cup at the end of the qualifying round before the tournament starts.
Next, you're going to predict that Labour's going to win the next general election.
Well, we're definitely going to win the World Cup. And and as far as the election's concerned, well, you know, there's only one poll that counts, and that's a year away, and it's...
Well, that's true, but just to be serious, I mean, Labour's polling record at the moment is, shall we say, not particularly brilliant. Tony Blair at this time of the this time of the Parliament was 20, 30 points ahead. You're actually behind the Conservatives in a couple of polls this week. That must concern you.
Well, look, in the YouGov on Monday, we're 7 points ahead. Yesterday, we were behind in a couple of polls. Today, we're 3 points ahead in the Standard, and so that tells you that it's tight and it's close. And I have to say, the fact that Ed Miliband, after us losing the election in 2010, has had us consistently ahead of the polls, even today, is I think, pretty impressive.
But his own ratings are worse than Gordon Brown's were.
I think that what often happens, Margaret Thatcher had the same problem, Tony Blair in 94, 95. When you're unknown, when the public has not yet seen you doing the job, it takes time for people to get to know you and see the steel and the metal. The other thing is that we're going through a local election campaign where for 3 years UKIP has taken votes from the Conservatives, and the Liberal Democrats have clearly been sort of down and out on the canvas since they betrayed their voters in 2010. But in the last couple of weeks, with the local election and the European election choice in people's minds, I think you've seen some fall in Labour's polling relative to UKIP. But in 2009, the BNP were doing well. In 1989, the Green Party were doing well in the European elections. It's quite common in these elections outside the general election cycle for smaller parties to do better. I'm not complacent at all because I think UKIP is raising some big issues, but I think we've got a real chance of success next year. And I think it's really important, if we're going to secure this recovery that the Governor of the Bank of England talked about and make it work for all working people, make the economy actually work in a long-term, fairer way, I think you need a Labour government.
Right, let's go to Tony in Coulsdon. Hello, Tony.
Hi, Ian. Great show as normal, mate.
Thank you. Hi, Tony.
Hi, hello. I'll try and keep get straight to the question, but it does need some background. I'm a little bit surprised that you would confront Cameron in such a way and say that the plan isn't working. I speak from not singular experience, but that of a group, 7 corporate guys come together, sick and tired of paying so much in tax in the corporate world. We've formed a small partnership. We're one of those start-up companies. We're one of those statistics. As individuals, we're part of those statistics. And what we've done is simply pulled out of corporate life, stopped paying through the nose taxation, become much more tax efficient as individuals and as a group. And subsequently, we can pass all those savings on to our client base. That means the client's spending less. That means there's more money in the economy, more profit. I can't see how you could possibly challenge the fact that Cameron says it's working. It is, clearly.
Well, look, I'd say good luck to you, Tony. It's good to know that people are succeeding and starting and building businesses. And I want the tax system to reward entrepreneurs like you, and a tax system which allows you to grow and expand. I think part of the problem you've got in Britain today is if you drive down our motorways or past construction sites, you see lots of people working in teams mending the motorways who are formerly self-employed, because large employers employing large teams of people in parts of construction think they can get away with not giving people holiday pay, sickness pay, paying their national insurance by pretending they're self-employed, whereas in fact that's just false, because they're actually employed and part of a team. So I think I'd like to crack down on that. I don't see why you and me and all taxpayers should be subsidising that sort of false self-employment, but proper self-employment like you. I say good luck to you. But
doesn't Tony illustrate the problem that you've got, particularly in the south of England, where he's somebody that you need to vote for you, as you do in marginal seats all across the south, southeast, southwest, East Anglia, if you are to get a majority. Are you speaking to people like Tony, or are you playing to your core heartlands? Because it seems to me that there are a lot of policies that you're now coming out with, which is a good thing, but they do seem to be playing to your core supporters rather than people who maybe voted for Tony Blair back in 1997.
Well, I'm not sure. I was in Crawley in South London last week visiting a business there.
I saw you on the South East Regional News.
And we've got a good chance of taking control of Crawley Borough Council, and that can lay the foundations for a Labour MP back in Crawley. We took control in Ipswich last year. What we're doing in those places is we're building homes which are affordable. We're making sure that we actually have proper social care for people whose parents might be vulnerable and are worried about whether or not they're being looked after properly. There's lots of people in our country using food banks who are not out of work but in work, struggling to make ends meet.
But dare I suggest that those people are going to vote for you anyway?
Well, I think it's quite dangerous, Ian, to say the cost of living crisis is only something which starts north of Peterborough.
29 minutes in, first mention, good.
I think there are lots of people. Look, there is a cost of living crisis. David Cameron denies there's a cost of living crisis. I'm going to solve the cost of living crisis, and it applies across the south. There's people in Reading and Bristol. There's people in Swindon. There's people in Crawley, in the Medway towns, in in Harlow and Thurrock and Stevenage, Labour targets key seats which will be decided at the next general election across the south, who don't think David Cameron and George Osborne understand their lives or are standing up for them. And we do, and we will. And, I think that the fact is Scotland, Wales, North, South, East, West, we're the only one-nation party in British politics now.
Why should they think that you and Ed Miliband understand their lives any more than George Osborne and David Cameron? Because you've all come from this professional class of politicians.
Well, I think David Cameron and George Osborne say that if we cut taxes for people over £150,000, it will all trickle down. How out of touch is that? They say there's not really a cost of living crisis.
You had a lower tax rate than those people throughout the whole time of the Labour government, so that doesn't wash.
But then there was a global financial crisis, and the question is, do those with the broader shoulders bear their share of the burden, or do you cut taxes for the richest people? I just think it's, it was the Conservative chair of the Harlow Conservative Association who said, how out of touch of David Cameron to cut the top rate at a time like this. Even Tories are saying that, Iain, not just Labour politicians. I have a majority of 1,000 on the junction of the M1 and the M62 between Leeds and Wakefield, working people struggling to make ends meet, want work to pay, proud of their families, and they need people who will stand up for decent homes, affordable childcare, energy bills they can pay for. David Cameron, he's not been to Yorkshire, to my constituency, for a few years now. But when he did,
I bet he will in the election campaign.
Well, you'd think if he was feeling confident, he might have been recently. But been no sign of him. Unless he slipped in.
All right.
Maybe it's because we've got no Nando's in Morley.
That could well be. Let's go to Headley in Edgware. Hello, Headley.
Hi,
hello,
Headley.
Iain. Hello, Mr. Balls. I am asking a question really about the National Health Service. Ed Miliband the other day said that he was going to make it clear that GPs would offer patients appointments within 48 hours.
Yep.
And I assume the waiting lists are all going to come back, so all doctors like me will be under significant pressure. My question is, how will Labour fund the extra resource that's going to be required? Will you increase taxes, or are you going to increase other forms of national insurance in order to pay for the extra demand you're going to place on the NHS?
Headley, it's an interesting question. What about this idea of having a specific 1p extra for the NHS? Ed?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking Headley what his view of that was. I thought you were asking Headley's view.
No.
We said that we would make sure that everybody gets an appointment within 48 hours, and we said that we would pay for that. It's cost £100 million. It's a saving we can make by stopping the bureaucracy around competition and compulsory competitive tendering. That is something which we've paid for, so it would mean that Headley and GPs like him will get the money to take on the extra staff they need to be able to provide that guarantee to patients. £100 million is a drop in the ocean compared to the £2 billion which has been spent on another NHS reorganisation in the last 3 years. If I said to Headley, do you think the NHS reorganisation in the last 3 years has gone well, or has it been a colossal waste of money? What do you think?
Colossal waste of money, but I also think that £100 million is not going to get the whole of it's not just the GP sector. I'm actually a consultant.
The £100 million was only for the GPs, Headley. So I agree with you on the wider challenge.
It's a much wider challenge than that, I think.
It is.
If you're going to really pay for structuring the NHS thoroughly, it's going to cost a lot of money. And I just wondered, 1p on what? On national insurance?
Well, look, the reason Iain raised that was because in 2002 we did put a 1% on national insurance for employees and employers to pay for, a big expansion in NHS funding. And you'll maybe remember, I do as somebody working in politics at the time, in 1996 people were waiting to have a new hip or to have a new knee, 18 months, 2 years, more than that. And that injection of funds and the extra doctors and nurses and the efficiency which came with that meant we got that waiting time down to 18 weeks from over 2 years. It's a massive change, but people want more. And they want more, and there's more opportunities and more drugs, but it costs money. So you're right to challenge us to make sure we are more ambitious, but we should start avoiding colossal wastes of money like we've seen in the last 3 years.
We're in danger of running over our time, but I do want to ask you about the advert that you put out last week about VAT, where you had all these pictures of supermarket products, none of which were actually vatable, and you were saying that basically people would save £450 on shopping bills because of the rise in VAT, and under Labour they wouldn't pay so much. But the maths didn't add up, did they? Because I don't know if you saw Douglas Alexander with Andrew Neil on Sunday. He was saying, oh, this £450, that's over the lifetime of a parliament, where you said, no, it was actually within a year.
It's Institute for Fiscal Studies figures which show that the average household £450 a year on the cost of the rising VAT.
You'd have to spend more than £20,000 each year on vatable items.
And there are some people who have considerably higher incomes than that, who spend a lot of money on vatable items, people spending thousands of pounds on extensions and the kind of things which it applies to. The Institute for Fiscal Studies average figure is £450 a year. And the point that our campaign were making in that advert, and abstracting from the picture...
Well, do you accept you got the picture wrong?
Abstracting from the picture...
Well, it was wrong to use non-vatable items.
Look, abstracting from the...
The answer you're looking for is yes.
Abstracting from the picture. I'm not going to say... Whoever decided...
Austin Mitchell wouldn't apologise for it. I'm not asking you to apologise, just accept you got it wrong.
When I saw it, I think had the same reaction as you, which is I think I might have chosen a different picture.
So you saw it after it went out?
Had I been drawing up that ad. But it makes a bigger point, which is that Nick Clegg said, look, in Sheffield, in his constituency, in Sheffield, Nick Clegg's own leaflet said, vote Liberal Democrat to stop the Tory VAT bombshell, and he then came into government as the Deputy Prime Minister and voted for it.
Someone can ask
£450 a year. That was the bigger point we were making.
Someone can ask him about that tomorrow. So you only saw that.
Why don't you ask him about it tomorrow?
Well, I can't because Nick Ferrari is.
I think you should be moved to the morning.
Thank you very much for that. Don't try and deflect me from what I was asking you. This advert, did you only see it after it went out? Was that Douglas Alexander's advert that you didn't actually approve?
Look, these campaigns are busy times and there's always lots of things going on. But,
So that's a yes then, isn't it? That is a yes. Okay. Ed Balls, thank you.
I thought the political message, deep and buried within it, was a very powerful and potent
I'm sure you did, and I'm sure we all did. Ed Balls, next time we will have you back for the full hour once these elections are out the way. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Pleasure.
That's Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor. I'm Iain Dale at Drive. It's 5:36 LBC News Time. Simon Conway has the news headlines.
Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls has told LBC a Labour MP should apologise for comparing US drugs giant Pfizer's attempt to take over AstraZeneca